get to a sustainable pace where you have a decent gap between what you take home and what you expend. And then from there, you branch out of the saving mindset and figure out how to add income or income streams. The more income you have above your expenses, the more you can invest and save, which in turn adds that income stream. So you're snowballing faster and faster.
Hello, hello. Welcome into the Get Invested podcast with Matthias and Jordan. We're here again to talk about real estate, investing, finance, and probably some general tomfoolery. We'll see how it goes. We're glad to be back rolling after a lengthy holiday period. Speaking of holiday period, I hope any of you who had not had a chance to listen to the self-directed IR episode that we did very early on in our podcasting tenure. We re-released that during the Christmas to New Year's week. Hope you guys had a chance to go back and listen to that one, because we're both in agreement that out of all of the podcasts we've done, that's definitely one of the more informative and worthwhile ones. I think there's probably at least 3, and that's on that list. So, but today we're, of course, in the new year, so we're looking forward and happy to be back with you guys. Matthias, what has been up in this chilly time of year?
It is. It's actually relatively nice here now that we're back in Florida. Never got too cold up in the Midwest, but it was very weird weather. But it was weird enough weather and cold enough that the normal entire family coming down with like the sinus infections, the coughs, I had it the worst out of my family. I had fevers for a while and sinus infection stuff. So good times, holidays. That's how you do it. You go home and mingle with a whole huge group of family. One of my sisters was home too, plus Jared and Jesse both lived there, so it was a packed house at mom's and tons of little runny nosed kids running around coughing into faces, and here we are. But it was a good holiday all around.
So did other people come up with you, or did other people drive up as well as you, or just?
Yeah, Rebecca drove in from.
Rebecca drove in. Oh wow, and brought her 3 or
4.
4. Wow.
Yeah, man. Okay. All of us stayed at mom's house too. Jared obviously stayed at his place. Jesse ended up crashing at mom's most nights, then the basement. But
okay. Well, I don't think you get to speak for the entire Midwest, because I am actually recording this from the Midwest, but not Kansas City, Cleveland. And it is snowing and a solid like 30 degrees. I actually don't mind it because I'm actually looking at snow right now. I don't mind it because in Charlotte, it never gets that cold. So it's kind of a nice, like, oh, this is a nice little break. I get to put on my big winter coat. But I get to leave it as well. So, but yeah, same thing. Rachel actually had norovirus and then just went straight into RSV the first week of Christmas break for her as you get it. Yeah. And my immune system, fought that off, karate chopped its way to just a general icky cold with congestion and, the post-nasal, which is probably what you're hearing right now. So I see that as a triumph.
Going strong.
Yeah. Right. Considering I had so many diseases so close to me, but it's still not been super fun. I'm hoping we're getting past that point, but yeah, I mean, 'tis the season, right? That's really the more.
Yeah, it seems like the entire world, or at least country. I don't know anybody that I talked to that didn't have most of the household down with something or other, and to varying degrees, right? Not necessarily everybody's laying in bed all day, but enough to impact the activities.
Well, I believe if I have my microbiology correct here, viruses move better in the cold than the warm. So
yeah, plus everybody stays inside when it's cold.
Yeah, and then you're seeing other people, and yeah, exactly. I should have gotten one of those COVID, the really serious ones that they had for like the doctors, where it was like a whole like Darth Vader mask you could put on,
the rebreather or something.
Yeah, and it had it attached to like an actual like
Like a
recycle,
hazmat
like
suit,
a
like a full on,
filter.
yeah.
Yeah, I had a filter. Yeah, I should have gotten one of those for the holidays, and then just start wearing it at all times from like December to February.
Good luck, because as soon as you take it off, your immune system's like, "Hey, we're good. We don't have to deal with anything anymore." Oh, bam!
Yeah, no, I'm sleeping with it. I'm sleeping with it.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's probably enough of the medical corner or the CVS corner because that's definitely where I've been living these days. No free ads, but that's just what is near our house, and they have all the medicine. I even took it to the top and bought the Sudafed that you have to show your ID for because
Ooh,
you can make
that's the
meth
good
with it.
stuff.
I know
I
the
don't think
good
I've
stuff.
ever. I don't think I've ever even used that.
It's good stuff. It's not doing as bang up of a job in this new strain, but it's still excellent. You can only buy a limited amount because those
Yeah.
ingenious meth cookers, they figured out a way. All right. Well, we're gonna jump in here to our topic, which is kind of sticking with what we have been talking about, kind of long term type things, right? We had the reflection on the year, and then we were kind of looking forward on our year as CVI. And so, in that spirit, we're going to talk about setting goals, financial goals, of course. Again, 'tis the season. We're not going to say any of this is a New Year's resolution. One, because I think that's kind of a cursed term, and everyone understands that, oh, you break those immediately. We're talking about if you wanted to take the fact that we have marked recently as the beginning of a new chapter, even though it's just an arbitrary point around the sun, we've decided this one matters. We are going to go with that idea, that framework. Okay, starting now, looking forward, what kinds of goals do you want to have, or what kind of goals do you want to set, and how to achieve them? And we're going to use me kind of as the guinea pig of sorts because, as we've discussed previously, I just turned 40. So our framework here is, say I want to be a millionaire in 10 years. So when I turn a half century, still looking 38, how do I ensure that I will be a millionaire? Is that
Well,
how we want to think about it, Matthias? Or you got some tweaks to
I think
that
so. I
framework?
think so. I think the best thing I would say is I think you're already in trouble because you're married, and I don't believe Rachel's a millionaire. So the easiest way to accomplish this is to marry a millionaire. So you kind of hose yourself on day one on that one.
Yeah, see, yeah, I'm in a real catch-22 there because she has a pretty good insurance policy, but then I wouldn't be
Ooh.
married to her anymore
Okay.
because you
Okay.
can't be married to a dead person.
Not right now. Okay.
Currently
No, I'm
not
just kidding.
legal, so
She's not. I don't know if she's going to enjoy this part of this episode. But anyway,
yeah, just go ahead and hit fast forward.
all right. Welcome back, Rachel. So what I would say, I would say it's important to one define what a millionaire is. Before we hit record, we were discussing kind of what actually is a millionaire. I think that's important to talk about. But
Yeah,
two,
yeah.
I do think I do think it's a worthwhile goal, and we'll talk about that and how to get there and what I recommend and kind of the mindset that it takes to get to a place like that. But first of all, let's start off defining a millionaire. You brought
Absolutely.
up, yeah, you brought up like, okay, so if I make $1 million a year, and let's just say I make enough that my take home pay after taxes is $1 million a year, does that make me a millionaire? And my answer to that would be obviously not, because it really depends on what did you do with that money you brought home? Did you spend it all that year? Like, what's your net? Are you saving any of it? Have you built up any over time? That's kind of my answer to that. It
Right.
depends.
Because it's it depends, but it's also, it isn't the idea of, I mean, it's, as a definition, it's that you have at any given moment a value at your disposal in some form or fashion that
Mm-hmm.
reaches that amount, not that you have like made that much at some point or another. So I think a lot of people think about it because so many people are thinking salary,
Mm-hmm.
that they think, oh, if I just make a lot, then that's it. And it's like, well, not
And that's an
really.
important part for our discussion today is that like high earners are often paycheck to paycheck just the same as low earners. And it's a choice to live like that, in my opinion. But that doesn't necessarily make you a millionaire. It's a net worth, right? It's a net worth question is do you have equity in your investments, equity in your retirement accounts, equity in your cash savings, equity in your assets and your, whatever you have. Let's say you have a bunch of gold in your closet. Does all that added up in the equity in your house? Does all that add up to being $1 million or more. That's kind of the definition of millionaire in the simplest form. Obviously, there's other accredited investor calculations that take more stuff into account. That's not really what we're talking about right now. Is like, let's say your goal is to be a millionaire. Well, that means you need to have assets minus debt equals $1 million plus. That's
Right.
effectively it. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Because again, I live in a very affluent area of Charlotte, called Ballantyne, where I'm sure there are many people who will, net value is far above that. But I think there's also quite a few that just have a really good job in finance or tech or whatever in Charlotte, but they also have a $1 million house and drive a Tesla and a Range Rover. And, and so it's like, if you add up how much all of that cost, sure, that's way over $1 million. But like, if you stop paying for it, does it stay where it is, or does someone come get it? Does a guy with a tow truck and a little
or a police
salty
van with
out there? Yeah, exactly.
With a moving van. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like, you're not a millionaire if you require a job to maintain that million. I mean, everybody requires a job, but if a job is giving you your millionaire status, you're not a millionaire. Or a salary per se. It's like, look, obviously you need income, but because eventually if you were just living off of your savings, you'd run out theoretically. But that's the point, is that it's an asset question more than it is a salary or income question. An asset can be just straight savings. I wouldn't recommend that you just save $1 million in cash and just hold on to that.
Yeah. I mean, if you've listened to us recently, I struggle with understanding depreciation as an asset for syndications and apartment buildings. But this one I understand. If you have $1 million in cash, that's a depreciating asset because of inflation. So,
which is
you don't
the
want
wrong
that
way.
at all. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think that's a good way to define it. And of course, guys, we're just saying that it's not the end goal of life and the end all be all of all things to be a millionaire. And please don't like make stickers or cards once you get there and like hand them out to people. That'd be really obnoxious. But
also, $1 million ain't that much anymore, so it's not
exactly.
It's not overwhelmingly impressive.
It's
a good start.
It's still a good goal. And
100%.
as we do ascribe on this podcast we're talking about mindsets. This is a little bit different one. It's called the growth mindset, which is a mindset that says as long as you're improving, that is the goal, not if you miss your goal. That's a lot of people get stuck in that, especially as kids. They get stuck and they didn't reach where they aim. It's like, well, did you improve? So, hey, say for instance, in this theoretical, if I get to 950,000, am I going to be sad that I'm not at $1 million, or am I going to be happy that I'm significantly better off in 10 years than I am now in this theoretical scenario? So, I mean, clearly,
100%.
I should be happy. Yeah.
I think the most important aspect is that mindset that you're talking about. We kind of almost labeled this episode like earning versus savings, and I think, but it's less focused on that. It's more focused on the mindset of exactly what you just said. Is any action I take going to improve whatever? Like, is it going to be a positive in favor of my goal, or is it going to be a negative? And that could come down to saving and budgeting. Like, look, saving money is good, and if let's say that your only take-home pay is $5,000, the more of that you can actually apply towards savings and investment, the better. Lower expenses is better, but you also should look at it from if all you're ever going to make is $5,000, it's going to be really hard to get to that $1 million. I'm not a mathematician, but it's going to take a lot of maths and a lot of long time to do it. So really the goal is like, hey, let's keep our expenses reasonable, but let's build that growth mindset to where I keep growing and improving each thing that I do, each activity, each decision that I make. Let's make sure it's adding on to the positive side of the equation, and that just speeds things up, and you get better at it over time.
And yeah, and also, I mean, sorry, the teacher in me is just coming out here because it's just a pedagogical thing to say, to set up a binary, earning versus saving, or risk versus reward, or whatever you want to put it as, and then just show how like it's not an either or there's an in between. So in this instance, like if you're just saving, you could easily turn some of that. Say you're just like for like 7 years, you've made $5,000 a month and you've saved 1,000 of it, but you've only saved it. If you invest that in something, all of a sudden that 5,000, theoretically should go
Yeah.
up because you should be earning more, at which point you can save more. So, right, we're going to
Compounding.
talk about abundance mindset and all this stuff, but there's clearly a way in which it's all about how you think about it.
I
So
agree.
where you want us to start?
I
Like
think
specifically.
I think let's say so your goal is 10 years to become, net worth of $1 million or plus or whatever. I think number one, you want to start looking at, probably first you do want to get on talk budget. I think initially there's always budget is, hey, look at your monthly expenditures, your average monthly expenditures, and you don't just take 1 month, because 1 month you could have gone on a vacation, and in another month you could have got a bonus. So like, you're gonna have to average this stuff out over a year or whatever.
Right,
But
right.
if you average take in $5,000, average spend $4,000, let's just adopt that as our scenario.
Okay.
You do want to get a grasp of that. If you're comfortable with where your expenses are, meaning, you don't feel like you're in excess and spending too much, and also you're not like absolutely, eating spam every night, or whatever for dinner. So spam and ramen, or whatever. If you're not just making yourself miserable, like you're at a sustainable pace, cool. Or get to that. That would be the first thing that I'd say, is like, get to a sustainable pace where you have a decent gap between what you take home and what you expend, so that you do have, that $1,000 a month or whatever it is to play with, per se. That's where I would start. I always make sure you stabilize a budget, because some people literally just don't. They're afraid to check, and they literally just say, "Hey, I'm serious. Like, my checking account has, how much is in the checking account, honey? I don't know. We got 300. Sweet. We can go out to eat, and I get paid tomorrow, so we're good." It's like, to me, that's a terrifyingly unfathomable way to live. And I would say, so get control of that, be an adult, and step number one on your goal is stabilizing your expenses, on a monthly basis. And some of that could be, hey, maybe $100, $200 a month I'm setting aside for a vacation that I'm going to spend later. Whatever you're budgeting, it's fine. I just want you to get to a sustainable level of spending. And then from there, you kind of branch out of the saving mindset, and you need to figure out how to add income and add assets. Yeah, both of which are kind of the same thing. So, you know, income or income streams, right? Like, so, if you just can't get above that 5,000 per month in whatever job you're doing, and it's, for maybe you have kids, maybe like you just don't have any more, you can't go back to school, whatever it happens to be, that you're limited there. There's still plenty of other ways you can adjust, or you can supplement that income. There's plenty of side hustles. I mean, you could do Uber on the weekends. You know what I mean? Like, there's lots of ways to add income streams to start accelerating the income side of the equation. Because, like you said earlier, the more income you have above your expenses, the more you can invest and save, and which in turn adds to that income stream. So you're snowballing faster and faster. So I think that's the first step is stabilizing, and the second step is looking into ways to add income streams.
Yeah, I mean, I could say very concretely and you could too, honestly, from your time in the military. As a teacher, I'm paid a certain amount by the state based on my years of experience and my degrees. And sure, that goes up a little bit year to year, and then maybe the whole thing will get shifted up by the, by the state legislator or whatever. But it's not like I can earn a bonus, by doing this, that, or the other. Now, as an AP teacher, I could earn a bonus by that, but that would be just kind of fixed, set in. So maybe you're just in a job that you really like, but it's just the income is, like
It's
same thing with the
structured.
military. Once that's what you make, and then you have to find other ways. And for us teachers, obviously, it was tutoring on the side, but yeah, you just find a way. I would say though, I mean, so one of the things I think maybe might be helpful is, say we have that 1,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of percentage would you suggest for how to break that 1,000 down that you have to play with? Say that there's no big vacation or big expense coming up, or maybe we should just set a percentage of there'll inevitably be something you need to be saving for. Let's do it that
Always.
way.
Well, one,
Yeah.
I mean, having an emergency fund is important. This is more like personal finance side, less goal achieving side. But let's say you've got that set, you've stabilized, you've got your emergency fund set. Because the biggest way to throw yourself off is to not be able to afford something that you need at the time you need it in an emergency. And now you're swiping a credit card and paying exorbitant fees on something, or taking out a loan, whatever. So emergency fund is important to avoid that. But Honestly, I would do in terms of percentage of that $1,000.
Yeah, let's say that 1,000 is past all that. Like that's already taken care of. This
Right,
is
right.
just for.
I guess it depends on, are we starting at zero? Do we have no other savings?
I was going to ask that same question actually earlier. That was something I guess in the pre-production meeting. We we didn't talk about where I was starting at in this scenario. What do you want to start me at?
Let's say you have retirement savings, you have no additional savings. You're like, all right, I got
Okay.
my emergency fund savings cash. I've got, my 401k, maybe even a Roth IRA or whatever. Let's say you start there, and there's no other like brokerage account, Robinhood or whatever that you've been playing around with. Let's just say you're starting from scratch. So I would say, first of all, I would say max out your Roth IRA. Well, you're a W-2 employee. I would start by doing that, and that's, I don't know. I think they went to did they go to $7,000 this year? In 2024.
If you have a Roth in addition to your employee
No,
thing,
Roth is completely on your own. So
I know.
Roth
You're talking about your Roth. Yeah, it's.
yeah,
I think it's 7. You can put at least 7 in.
seven.
Yeah,
I think it's a
we
seven.
looked that up the other day. It
For
was 7. Yeah.
2024. Yeah, so I would start there. So the first $7,000 each year, I would invest in there, and I would just invest in like index funds, Nasdaq, SP 500 index funds, and I would just do that first because you want that to start growing in a tax free situation, and that's just part. Now we're building on your net worth at a tax advantage way, one of the most tax advantage ways you can, while you're making your, while we're building. So let's say the first $7,000 you make, of your saying, I'm putting in there.
Okay, so you're saying 7 of the 12 months when I'm starting out is is Roth, right?
Yep.
And then of course I'm already contributing to my
All
the matching of
your
employee
housing
and all
tax,
that.
all
Yeah,
the normal
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. Okay, so
I'm doing
7 out of
that for now.
12,000. Okay.
Yep.
All right, so 7 out of 12 months is Roth. Now, I do want to also note, just for my buddy who I was helping set stuff up the other day, that 7,000 also applies to traditional self-directed
Contributions.
IRAs.
Yeah, if you're contributing to to your own individual, whether it's tax, post-tax, pre-tax IRA, yes, that's true. But I would do a Roth because it's post-tax on the Roth side.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
That's what I would do. The remaining 5 for the year, I'd probably put that in a money market account or a really short-term high yield savings account, for the time being. And here's why. It's because what you could do is you could just start a brokerage account and just start investing that way. But then you're at the whims of the market. And the goal here is, in my opinion, and this is how I did it, my goal is to be able to make sizable investments as early as possible. And if it's in a booming stock market year, I mean, you can make this call real time too. I mean, you're a sentient human being as you move along here. But let's say the stock market is coming out of a trough, and you're like, okay, I've probably got a year or so of decent stock market performance. It might not be like a skyrocket, but it's like, it's a reasonable. It's not no real indicators the economy is getting ready to crash or anything like that. So maybe you, instead of a high yield, you put it in a brokerage account where you got some other index funds or some other funds, well diversified, tied to the stock market. Okay, that's a thing to do. But the goal is to get, in my opinion, to where you can make a sizable chunk, 10, probably $20,000, and you invest in either in some individual real estate, in some private equity, like what we do, or you do, because that's where the vast majority of your growth is going to come. That's where all of my growth came from. And not only that, but that is income producing. So a lot of times when you're investing in stocks, they're growth stocks, which is awesome, but they're not paying you anything. You're not adding to that income stream that is just going to keep allowing you to invest more and more. So goal number 1 is to put the stuff tax free, get that growing for the long term, into the Roth. But then right after that, I would start looking at ways to invest the remaining each year in income producing assets. You could do that with like stocks that pay dividends, but that's a lot riskier because you have zero control over that stock. Or you could find a bit like us, find some income producing real estate, find out how much it takes to invest, build up to that amount, and start deploying that. That is how I would do it.
Okay, so let's just make sure we go back and get through these steps. So yeah, so we got the Roth, right? And now that's so the way that I'm understanding this, and hold on, I'm gonna switch to another sticky note. I don't have my normal array of note-taking pads that I have at home. The kids at play pad is not with me. So that's year one though, right? Year one. I mean, we don't have to say year by year because of course there's going to be calls you have to make, but year one is 7,000 Roth and then 5,000 in something that you can put 5,000 in. So that's money market or maybe dividend stocks or high yield saving. What
Yeah.
about CDs?
Yeah, high yield savings CDs. CD rates are terrible right now because
Yeah.
yeah, but it all just something along
Honestly,
that lines.
they're not good, but they're better than a lot of other things if you're someone who's just not really sure, and
It's better than
like you
leaving
can
it
put it in something for
in a regular savings account. That is true.
yeah.
But the
I mean,
goal
if you
here
put
is not because you want to be able to deploy it. That's the only problem. Well, the biggest problem with
yeah,
CDs is that they're locked.
yeah.
You do a 3-month CD, a 6-month CD, and it rolls over pretty quickly. But you don't want it to be locked up when an opportunity presents itself. So I'd say the goal is probably to get to like 25K in a to where you could deploy 25K at a time. I think and that may take a year or two to get to.
Yeah, so
Realistically.
that's what I guess that's my next question is say a roll. Okay, say there's I guess it's me. Sorry. I was gonna say there's a guy out there that does it. Okay, say I follow your advice to a
Mm-hmm.
T. I got 5,000 in a money market that I can deploy. I got 7,000 in the Roth, of course. It rolls around. It's now January. See, when are people going to listen to this? January the 13th, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
will be the day.
Yeah.
2026. All right, I'm
Okay.
starting over again. Now, is this 7,000 again to the Roth?
Well, at this point, if at some point during the first year, I would have probably, and this is probably a good point, but I would automate the Roth IRA part. So where you're doing not just dumping it as you get it into up to $7,000, I would automate it for whatever 7,000 divided by 12 is. Automate it for that. So just under 6, maybe 58, 500. I don't know, whatever that is. Automate that amount, and then and so you don't have to think about that anymore. And now, as your money comes in each month, your $1,000, you still have a chunk. You're adding that to your money market, and you're waiting and looking. So
But you would
at this
still
point,
say, sorry, just interrupt, just real quick. Let's play this percentage wise because not everyone's going to have exactly $1,000. It's $583. But more
boom.
importantly, yeah, you were pretty close. More importantly, $583 is essentially 58%. So you're saying still put of this $1,000, 58% of it in the Roth, and you're
I
planning
am
on
for now.
deploying out of the Roth. Are you planning
I'm
on
sorry.
deploying? Are you planning to deploy to the bigger assets out of the Roth?
At
Or
some point, yes.
okay, okay,
But you got
all
to
right.
build that up too. But that's my point though. Is you got to get up to that 25K amount, and if you can do it in a Roth quicker, that's the most tax advantage way to do this. So that's
Okay.
why we're working on the Roth. So yes, I would do that while building the cash side. At some point during this process, probably not going on the way to a million, but at some point you're going to lose the ability to use a Roth IRA because you get above a certain income level, they don't let you uh,
Mm.
put money into a Roth. There's like it tones down. I think it phases out, but it phases out pretty quick once it starts. But irrelevant for this discussion. But basically, the goal is to get to that deployable chunk of capital as quickly as possible,
Okay, so we need
because
to
it
maybe
does.
just
That's what
fast
it takes.
forward here.
Yeah.
Year two, we do the same thing, right? All right. So at that point, say now it's January 13th, 2027. All right. And
Yeah,
I
you've
have
probably been paid a few times by your small investments. So, in addition to the actual cash savings, we've got some decent returns coming in each time that CD rolls over, each time the money market, you're 1-2%, whatever. But that starts to build up. So you got a few more thousand on that too. You're going to hit that 25 number at
so
the
let's say
very
at that
latest.
point I probably have it, right? Like
Yes.
14, I have at least 14,000 in my Roth,
Mm-hmm.
and I have, like you said, I mean, let's go conservative, and it's just, well, 2%. So that means I have what,
You have
10,200.
you probably have more than that, and here's why: is because on the other side, we've also been looking at ways to increase that income stream, whether it is with a small at your job, keep the expense level stabilized. Now you're adding to it, and we're doing more than 1,000 a month each time in terms of like, hey, you've tutored more students, whatever it is,
Right.
because you're also, that's the other thing you can do to influence this. So in year 3, you're going to have, let's say you have your 25,000 or you're darn near it
Okay.
of
Let's
deployable
say
capital.
I got there. I made
Hmm.
Rachel get a second job and I take
Sure.
all the money from it. Yeah, there we go. Okay. And invested for the family, of course.
Hey,
Invested for the family. Okay.
what's
Yeah.
yours is hers, man. What's yours is hers.
And the other way around, most importantly.
Very much so.
Okay. So I got my 25K. I'm like, all right, I'm going to become a big time small investor.
Yeah, and then you start. You find you're in growth, so you don't really need, you're not investing for a cash flow play per se. Whereas that's nice, but your goal right now is growth. So you want to find some value add, something where your sponsor, like what we do, where we go, hey, we buy at a discount, we fix all the problems. Now we've not only are we getting income up, but we're getting the value of the property is way up. So there's a bunch of equity that we're going to cash out on, and you deploy that. It's going to be a couple of years, and a lot of people feel that at that point they're back to square one, but you're not, because you've not only have you deployed capital that's now working for you faster than anything else, in my opinion, that you could have done. You've proven this concept to yourself, and your muscles are built to continue this process. So your next $25,000 is going to come a lot faster, especially if you're getting maybe distributions from that one. You're continuing to add to what you can do, because that's all passive, right? If you invest in private equity in a syndication, or in I mean, if you're going to buy houses on your own and do it that way, that's a lot more work, and you're gonna have to spend a lot of time that you could potentially have spent making money, learning how to best manage and operate this investment. Which is why I always tell people, let somebody who's already learned how to do it for you. I think that's the way to do it the fastest, in my opinion. Yeah, you can get higher returns doing it yourself, but it's a lot riskier, and there's no guarantee you're going to get any returns at all. And that's, if you ask most real estate, I think I was very fortunate in that we had some very knowledgeable people kind of mentoring us as we made our first investment. If you talk to most people who want to get started and did it on their own, I don't think their first investment went nearly as well as we lucked out into. So I think most people end up get started people, but don't expect that it's going to be a home run, and get to going. So that's why I always tell people, like, hey man, find somebody. It doesn't have to be me, but find somebody you trust that is proven that they know how to do this well, and that'll save you a lot of that heartache of having to start back over at scratch after a bad investment.
Right. And I think a lot of people think about, I mean, maybe this is just me, and maybe I'm just projecting the nonsense that lives in here, which is significant, onto the populace. But I feel like people who are like, oh, I'm going to, maybe I'll invest in some real estate, that is, like you said, like the single buy, I'll buy a house and, flip it. And,
Hmm.
or what, and it's like, I honestly, it seems like to me the better move, if you want to do that, is buy a house that you can rent, and then worst case scenario, you're paying off a mortgage with someone else's money.
Yep, which is a way that's another way to do this. I would argue though that to do that the most efficiently, you got to know what you're doing. You're not going to luck into it. You've got to know what
Mm.
you're doing, or somebody's got to be showing you what to do to best get. You have to have some level of expertise in order to achieve that, because a lot of people go, hey, the rent, like, it rents for 1,600, the mortgage only 1,400. That's easy. Like, no, that's a terrible deal.
Mm.
you know
Yeah,
uh,
there's a
it's
lot else that's gonna, yeah.
exactly. But you got to know these things. You got to know, can I actually get 1,600 in rent out of that house? Do I trust what I'm reading on Zillow or whatever, and why? All those things. Otherwise, the opportunities for you to stumble are much, much bigger. But anyway, so now that we've started deploying capital into private equity, or into real estate, or into something that's really accelerating the growth.
Yeah.
um
I think we could call this now phase 2, right? Like,
yeah, yeah.
let's go and let's think about this as, I don't know, what people are familiar with, whether that be pharmaceutical, drug production, or Marvel universe. We have had an endpoint, which is we have deployed 25,000, let's just say, because we're biased, into a syndication. All right.
Hmm.
So that's there.
It's
Now,
off
what
and
am I
moving.
doing? Yeah, that's out. Right. And that's according to our like our little scenario here. That's everything I had outside of the things that I'm contributing to at my company and my rainy day fund. So what am I doing? What am I doing now? Am I just doing it again and then combining what I did with what I get back.
Yep, you've now officially added a real income stream, an asset, income producing asset to your income stream. So you're going to get to that next 25K that much faster. And, assuming that's your, that's buy-in level of whatever the syndication is. It's an arbitrary number, but you kind of get the point. And you're going to continue to build your income. You've probably got a promotion of some sort in 3 years that it took to get here. You know what I mean? So your income's going to be higher. This is what I talk about. Like, it's a 10-year plan, but by year 3 to 5 is when you actually really start to see, let's say you started off literally at, okay, my rainy day fund was $10,000, which is that's a big emergency account. And you had about 50,000 at that point in your retirement accounts. So you're starting out, let's assume you don't own a home or whatever. Let's just say you started at a net worth of 60K. You paid off all your debts, net worth of 60K. Now you've got a net worth, like you just broke 100K, and you can see the velocity that's moving in that direction. And you're like, okay, now the concept is a little more proven for you. Your wife's making more, you're making more, and if you
About
can
time
keep
she
that.
makes more.
This is just not her episode.
This is just the episode for Rachel.
Then now you've got it moving, and I know we haven't increased our expenses, our monthly expenses, or how we live. Now we haven't bought the new cars, but we've made a significant percentage increase to our net worth. You've almost doubled your net worth in 3 years. Can you do that again?
Yeah, and that is a perfect example of the growth mindset that we were talking about, right? Because you can look at it and say, oh, well, I'm only worth $40,000 more than I was. And it's like, well, probably more than that if you count everything that you've been contributing to.
Sure.
But
yeah.
Whatever. It's like, oh, I'm only worth $50,000 more than I was. It's like, well, no, you're worth 100% more than you were, right? So it's like the doubling is the key, not the number itself.
And so as you do that, now you've probably got in your Roth, you've probably got 20,000 in your Roth after that third year, or more, right? If you've been maxing it out each year and assuming it's growth, maybe you got enough to deploy out of your Roth, and you just keep that going, and you can roll that into a self-directed IRA, invest in more private equity, real estate syndication, whatever, and now that's off to the races at a higher rate than it's going to do over the long term in the stock market. And you just keep firing off these snowballs. And I have multiple investors that have done this, and they've got some personal side investments, they got some Roth side, IRA side investments, and now across all of them, I'm cutting them, tens of $1,000s of checks a year just out of pure investments. And that's like, think back to when you first started, you're making $5,000 a month. What's that? Or like take home is $5,000 a month. That's 60 grand. Let's say your salary is $80,000 a year, 85, whatever it is, to get to that 60,000 of take home spread across the months. Now let's say you got somebody cutting you checks for 10, 15, $20,000 a year on top of all that stuff. None of that stuff has changed. In fact, it's probably gone up a little bit. Now, that is a different life already, and that's over a course of 3 to 5 years. You see what I'm saying? That's
Yeah, I do think we need to go back, though. I think we got a little fuzzy. One thing, I thought we deployed all of the money from the Roth already for that first investment. Have I gotten that money back?
No. That money is you're building in the Roth. You're building personal cash. The personal cash side is what we deployed first in this scenario.
Oh, well, so you're saying I saved $25,000 in 2 years of personal cash?
Yeah. Yeah, because you had 10, but we plussed up our income by side hustles and tutoring. We added, what did we say? So it's 12 years. So it's 7 for the Roth, 5 for you. So 10 over the first 2 years, you did $10,000 of and it's aggressive. I don't know, but we needed round numbers, but $10,000 of actual cash. Each of those paid you a little bit because of the CDs. Another 10% or 5%, whatever it is. Each of those years and bigger and bigger chunks. But then also you drove Uber, you tutored more people, and you pulled all that income directly to your to that stack of cash and kept adding it to your money market account or whatever it is that we did with that. So yeah.
Okay, so the Roth is still there. I mean, that isn't a pretty aggressive amount, but let's say it all works out.
Sure. And it's going to vary, but the goal is the first 3 years to be able to deploy out of one or the other.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, if we say the first three, then yeah, that seems eminently doable for sure, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, okay, I see what you're saying. So 3 years, and then you're deploying, and then at that point, if we keep doing the Roth at year 4, you've got enough in the Roth to roll it over to the traditional self-directed IRA, roll over
Well,
a
not
certain
traditional,
amount,
but then to the
or
self-directed IRA
self-directed IRA.
and
Sorry,
deploy
yeah, I don't know why I
that.
said traditional. Yeah, yeah, and
So
then
now you've
that
got
is a thing.
two
Yeah,
growing, and obviously
yeah.
that's only paying that's staying behind the tax wall in the Roth accounts. But as it's growing, but now as it shoots you cash, you're building up to the next one, to building up to the next one, and you can pull more from because you're continuously contributing as long as that lets you to your Roth IRA each month, that 583 or whatever it came down
Mm-hmm.
to, and you can whenever that gets to a big enough chunk to combine with whatever's been paid back from your syndication to your Roth IRA, to your self-directed IRA. Now you can combine the two and deploy, and the same on your personal side. Every new amount of income you make that you can funnel to the investment side, you're just going to multiply in that snowball. And now we start growing exponentially. If you can double from year 0 to year 3, and then you can double again from year 3 to 5, and then from 5 to 6, you're doubling. Okay, and now we're starting to talk some real money.
Right. And then, I mean, so I think maybe might want to go over just like, I think phase 3 would be you've been paid income distributions, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now you've gotten like say they sold the property,
Mm-hmm.
right? So now you have your original investment back plus the equity that was built into the property that was yours. And then at that point, I think people would be like, okay, do I do something slightly different with it? Do I do the same exact thing, do it with it? Do I need to be combining it? What do I need to be thinking about at that point?
That's when you start worrying about taxes. That's when you start having to bring in tax strategy to you. Because right now you're just trying to build income stream. Like the first two phases, you're just trying to build income streams and keep the income coming up that you can then keep cycling out to investments. And then by phase 3, that's when you want to start being a bit more strategic about how and when you deploy, making sure that, hey, if I need to be ready, maybe I hold off on an investment until, because I know they're selling this one in the next tax year. I want to be able to buy into one in that same tax year to try to wipe out whatever, because I'm going to have a good depreciation write off in that year. While I know I'm going to have some capital gains to offset coming from the big sale, you start being more strategic. And that's the point, when you're like, hey, maybe I talk to a more advanced tax professional instead of, your QuickBooks at the end of the year, because you have the lovely problem of making too much money, having too many income streams, to where you got to start worrying about how to minimize the tax liability as best as possible.
Right. I mean, well, yeah, sure. I mean, you got to start thinking about the minimize, but I think at the same time, that first one it's going to feel like, okay, I've made this money. I got this other money back. You're not going to feel like I'm making too much money. You're just like, okay, it actually worked.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Now I have to figure out, like,
But
do I combine this? Do I put it in some like a tax shelter? Do I just keep it as cash and put other cash and quickly put it back into the next syndication I find? I mean, those are, I guess at that point, it's really going to be a matter of circumstance, other than trying to deploy it in a way that will be tax reducing.
yeah, I think the most, I would just say, you've established the mindset. If you've been working this hard and living like you have over the past 3 to 5 years, on your way to phase 3, just don't, as long as you don't fall out of that mindset and say, hey, I've arrived. We just got a check for $70,000 on my $25,000 investment 4.5 years ago. As long as you don't go, you know what? I've always wanted a Dodge Viper, even though I don't think they make them anymore. But you know
That
what I
was a
mean?
real deep cut. That is an old school reference right there.
But
That's
but
like
that's my point. As long as you stay in the mindset, like, you're not there yet. What you can do in year 10, you can go buy a Dodge Viper cash, and you haven't impacted your growth because it's what you have, but it's sustainable because you're already at that millionaire status. But that's my main thing for phase 3, is that that's the time to start thinking very strategically, tax wise, and realize you're not there yet. You got to keep building these to where, if you want to get to that, if the goal is that millionaire status, that millionaire net worth, which gives you a lot of opportunities and freedoms going forward once you're 50, Jordan, Just realize that you're not there yet, and everybody's got to deal with it because I mean, at some point you're living the rest of your life. Maybe you have kids, maybe maybe it's somebody else and they get married, and now a wifey has some thoughts about how she wants to buy a house, whatever it is. I do understand that life is going on. I mean, I started having kids halfway through my journey before I hit millionaire status per se. So right about the time actually, but it's not. I understand that you're not just gonna be able to live in a silo and have blinders on the whole time doing this, but the closer you can stay, and it's back to the growth mindset, is that as long as you're doing more positive steps than you are negative steps in terms of towards your goal, I think that's really what the focus is.
Yeah, and again, the growth mindset is thinking not just okay, it's just about improving, but it's also about thinking that okay, I can search for the ways to do it rather than okay, I just got to hold on to it. This is all I have. I got to just, you know, protect it, keep it. It's how
Yep.
can I grow it? And we're not saying you work yourself to the bone or throw your money in all these risky investments or buy Dogecoin or anything, but just you're constantly as much as you can looking, researching, investigating is shares the same root with another word that we like.
I would say it's something that to be said for like this. Obviously, life is going on, but the more risks and the more pain you can handle up front, and not necessarily risk, but like the more pain and throwing everything you can to investments early on, the better off you'll be. Because later on, it's a lot harder when you got kids and wife, and maybe one of them has medical bills. It's a lot more difficult to start your investing journey at that point than it is when you're young, single, and you bounce off walls, because you're made of rubber still. So you don't get sick a lot, or
Okay, well,
whatever.
we've clearly removed ourselves from the scenario where I'm involved. This is obviously a
Yeah.
different scenario.
But that's it's worth being said, because the
Yeah.
sooner you do this, then you can even back off and slow down and maybe unwind a little bit of the attention you focused on the investment side in your 30s, if you did it for 10 years in your 20s. And obviously in your 20s nobody's making any money. You see what I'm saying? Like if you can
Yeah,
put
yeah.
away $25,000 in your 27, 28, if you can achieve year 4 by 29 of our scenario, then boom. And when you're 34 and you have 2 kids, um, you're doing better than if you were
Right.
starting at 34 making a higher income.
I mean, you've got the I mean, I
The
guess to
ball's
use
rolling.
the cliche, the ball is rolling.
Exactly.
And unless you do something just colossally, let's not say stupid, well, let's just say
Short-sighted.
huh?
Short-sighted. Let's say colossally
Yeah.
short-sighted.
Let's say anti-growth or short-sighted, that ball is going to be there rolling, even if for some reason you can't be adding, you can't
Yeah,
be
you're not as
spinning it
dedicated as you
faster.
were.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Um,
I think there's something to be said for doing that sooner rather than later, and then backing off as life forces you to, versus the other way around. You're gonna be better off in the
so,
long run.
yeah. So I guess, I mean, we're running pretty long here and people other than Rachel are probably tired of listening to us. She's been tired, but you did mention in our production meeting that, you and Jen had these kind of conversations, these decisions, like when you were gonna separate from the military, and I'm just wondering if there was like any scenario or anecdote that may just kind of crystallize this for our listeners. Who, I mean, we've been fairly theoretical here. Well, we have been hypothetical, not theoretical. We've been hypothetical. Yeah.
Yeah, so we look at over the last few years of my military career, when we were kind of deciding when we knew we were going to get out, we just didn't win just yet. We were kind of looking, hey, we'd been wanting to match the income. We wanted to get to like $10,000 a month of income from investments that would kind of cover all the expenses. That was always our goal for a long time, and we were basically there for the last few years. But the problem was, uh, we were we were starting to look, no kidding, like, hey, build our expenses. What are they going to look like when we get out? And one of the big ones which scares everyone is health insurance. I'd never paid
Yeah.
for health insurance in my life
Right.
before I separated, and obviously over the past, I don't know, 10 years, whatever, like health insurance has just skyrocketed. So it went from being a problem that I didn't care about to a very, very serious problem, especially as we're having kids. So that was one, and it was important. And Jen was admittedly very frustrated, not frustrated, but very apprehensive about, hey man, if this is going to cost this much, this is a big expense that we have not been paying. Are you sure we're good? And my response was always, expenses are a number. So if I need to pay $11,000, $12,000, or I need to have $12,000 a month of income stream from investing, then that's just a number. Then I can back into that. I just got to invest X amount more in income producing assets that is going to pay me that more. And it becomes a math problem, and it removes a lot of the fear from it. In my opinion, it removed a lot of the fear of and this is more along the lines of quitting your job and all that. But basically, it really is a math problem. I'd say it's like, getting to the $1 million, because in adding to your income streams, it's just math. The more you can throw into one side of the bucket, the more shooting out the fire hose from that bucket back into the income pile per se. So that's why we, as I was getting out, we poured every red cent we had into all the investments that we did, Heritage Cove and those. That was pretty much right at the end. And it was very painful for a while, because right as we cut my income, we spent all our cash basically, which is counterintuitive. But the reason I did that is because I knew the next forever is dependent on the passive income from those investments. And that's kind of, I guess that's the personal story on one of the discussions that we had. But I guess the answer to it was, hey, it's math. Math will always be true.
Right. Well, I would say accurate, but but yeah, I can see your point. Yeah, exactly. So that is another type of mindset shift, right? To think about it in those terms, rather than it's just like this thing. It's an immovable mountain, right? The expense is just you can't surmount it, right? We are just throwing all kinds of metaphors out there right now. I'm just mixing them, and it's just a lot of mixing up here. So that's probably a good indication that we should shut this down. So we were going to do that as always. Thanks for hanging out with us. And if you liked what you heard or saw, feel free to heart us, thumbs up us, 5-star us, like us, restack us, all of the things that you can do. Even better, if you want to make comments, feedback, send us a message, a DM, an email, write comments at the bottom of this at the Substack, whatever. We would really appreciate it. We're going to go ahead and say see you later at this point, and we hope you will be back with us next week on the Get Invested podcast.
Bye, everyone.
Doctor, please, the fame ain't painless enough. That's cause you ain't famous enough. You got a little game, but your name ain't ringing enough. He said, take 2 of these, put some change in my cup. I said I wasn't poor, he gave me some more. Prescribed me a publicist and pointed to the door. Out, ouch. I'm telling you this all from my therapist's couch. Tell me about your mother, what she's all about. Prescribed me an interview and then told me to bounce. Damn. Jeez, the world is so cold. I'm glad I bought these skis. Went right off of the bunny slopes and right into the trees. Rendered unconscious, they rushed me to a concert. Instead of green jello and maybe chicken soup, they fed me magazine covers and video shit. I'ma keep it cool and I'ma do me. It is what it is.